Hey, how you getting on? Today on Reasons Why I Can't Be Trusted with Money, I check out my dream amp. Well, kinda. Almost. This video is about the Soldano SL60. Right, in this video I'll be demoing the Ultra the World but brand new to me Soldano Series 2 SL60, and I will be shooting it out against some amps that I think are relative. But I'm going to start this video off with a whole lot of talking, so if you're not interested in me waffling on and listening to my beautiful voice, feel free to use the timestamps in the description below. I won't judge you, not much anyway. So, Soldano. I've been in love with the Soldano tone for ages. I had a Jet City JCA50H for a long time, which I absolutely loved, and is one of the few amps I regret selling. I sold it because I needed the money, and I had the Synergy SLO module, which is a fantastic sounding module, and I think it's still my favorite Synergy module to this day. And ever since I saw Mike Soldano on Tone Talk, I really wanted to own one of his amps because he just came off as such an awesome guy. And I like that enthusiasm. It's the reason why I wanted a PRS guitar. It's a reason why I wanted a diesel amp to begin with as well, because I could really pick up the enthusiasm these guys had. And yet Mike just seemed like an awesome guy. And funnily enough, my channel started because I missed out on a Soldano. It was on eBay. A guy had listed a Soldano SL60, which I really wanted. Starting price was really high. I made the only bid and I won, and I was so stoked. But then the guy just refunded me and relisted the amp, and that really pissed me off. And being the absolute man-child that I am, instead I bought a diesel Herbert to console myself, which put me on the track to starting a YouTube channel in the first place, because then I got the Mark II and I made the videos, and fast forward, now we're here. And in the meantime, Soldanos had unfortunately gotten more expensive, and the old original Soldano SLOs are unfortunately also very expensive, so I felt that dream slowly drifting away, until my buddy Luke the other week reached out to me and asked me if I wanted to buy his Soldano SL60. And he made me a stupidly good deal I could not refuse, and right now I'm so happy that I'm terrible with money because this sounds excellent. So what is the SL60? It is the predecessor for the Hot Rod 50 model, and full disclosure, for the majority of this video I'll be leaning on information I got from a German website called heavymetalgentleman.de, which is a website, kind of a blog thing that belongs to a man called Robert Leinhaus, which he kind of chronicled his gear journey. Really well written about amps and cabs. Really enjoyable if you understand German, that is. He also has another website called Captain Bob, where he explains how tube amps work and how gain stages work, and it's a really good read. But you have to speak German. Dafür musst du schon Deutsch können, sonst nützt dir das leider gar nichts. Ja, der komische Harlose einfach kein Deutsch. So according to Heavy Metal Gentleman, this amp was built in Japan in 1991. It was the first amp Mike Soldano made after the SLO100, and the exact numbers are kind of disputed. Some sources say there were only 150 built. Mr. Robert Leinhaus assumes it was more like 500 or 1,000. Based on the listings I've seen in Germany, I'd be surprised if it only were 150. But what this amp is, as I just mentioned, it's the predecessor of the Hot Rod 50 series. It's basically the lead channel of the Soldano SLO100 in a 60-watt package. So it's a single channel amp. It has a high and a low input, just a 3-band EQ, preamp volume, which is our gain, master, which is our volume, and a presence knob. That's it. It probably has the same shitty loop that the original Soldano SLO had. I'm not going to go into that. I don't really care about that. I just want to listen to some tones of this amp. According to Mr. Leinhaus, the difference between the SL60 and the Hot Rod 50 is that these use slightly better components. Don't shoot me, according to him anyway. It's mostly hand wire and it works off higher voltages, so he claims. I haven't verified any of this, so don't shoot me if that's wrong. So I've got the SL60 set up with my favorite overdrive pedal, the Lichtlein Audio King in yellow. I'm not using the cab it's standing on. I'm using my EVH cab behind me here because I wanted to try something different. I'm miking up two speakers, the stock Celestion EVH speaker and a Celestion Blackback from 1978. Both were Shure SM57s. I really didn't think this through when I set up this spot because you can't see the cap right now. And I really didn't feel like, you know, breaking down all this stuff. So later for the shootout, I'm going to be using this with the tried and tested Celestion Vintage 30. So let's get into it. And I love how this amp sounds and reacts. It's exactly what I wanted it to be. And it's hard to believe this amp is almost as old as me, and it's in much better shape than I am. It's from 1991, so that makes it 34 years old, and it sounds really modern. And the boost wasn't even on yet. I mean, with the boost on, it sounds like this. Sorry, I got carried away there, but you get the idea. It's an incredibly tight and fun sounding amp. Let me turn that off again. The thing is, this part's probably going to be pretty short because it's very minimalistic. It's right up my alley. There's no bells and whistles. There's no switches apart from the standby and power switches that could get in the way or help you shape the tone or could break. So yeah, I love this. Let's briefly explore the controls that this amp has and see how effective the EQ is. It doesn't get super thick, but it really brings kind of a sub-low rumble almost. That's what I'd call it. There's a kind of a rumble in the background, but it's not really invasive. It's not in your face low end. Subtle, but nice. Mids. I'm going to play the riff that annoys everybody. So the amp doesn't get super honky like some other amps would if you dial up the mids. But the mid dial also seems to affect the high end a bit. So I think it's, yeah, it probably affects the high mids more than the low mids. Kind of like it there. Let's check out the treble. Gets very smooth, obviously, but still usable. All the way up. Let's see if it makes our ears bleed. And that doesn't sound unpleasant to me at all. The amp gets very bright, but not painfully bright, which I find interesting. So all three EQ controls have fairly decent range, but every position is somewhat usable to me. Nothing really sticks out as being too extreme for me. Let's check out what the presence does, and I think that's where the unpleasantness will come in. Yes, that can get quite harsh, and it's a bit like the presence control on a 5150 is like the first half, it doesn't really do much, and pretty much in the last quarter here, that's where the effect really kicks in. So as you can see, my EQ settings are anything but extreme on this amp, which is always a good sign. Master, I'm not going to do much with that because this amp is stupidly loud. I mean, with the dial very low, you can get kind of bedroom volumes, but you have to be very careful because you just have to blow on the knob. Sorry. You just have to look at the knob sideways and it gets really loud. I mean the dial is at what, barely 8 o'clock, and it's pretty loud in this room. It's louder than I usually play them. So let's check out the gain pot or preamp pot. As I can see from here, I just have it on 6 maybe. So it's pretty crunchy. Let's move over to the low input, see if that gives us anything resembling clean. I don't think it will. If we dial the volume on the guitar down. I'm actually impressed. I didn't think it would clean up that much. As soon as we... There doesn't seem to be a huge difference between the low and the high input. Let's dial this up some more. See how far this goes. So that's pretty usable with the gain all the way up. Let's add a boost to that. Gets a little feedbacky, but still sounds fantastic, to my ears at least. So what else is there to explore on this amplifier? Nothing really. Like, we've gone through the inputs. There's not a huge difference between high and low inputs, at least in the room. Maybe it's a little different with the mics. I'll find out when editing this. The EQ is nice and versatile. The entire range seems to be usable, as well as the entire gain range. With the guitar volume down, you can even get something resembling a clean tone. But let's face it, this amp is a one-trick pony. It does one thing, but God, does it do that one thing well. So I'm just going to change the setup here. I'm going to mic up the Celestion Vintage 30 from the year 2022, so nice and smooth sounding in this Marshall cabinet. And then we'll shoot out the Soldano SL60 against a few other amps, like a 5150, a Rectifier, and maybe one of these Engls here. So see you back in a sec. Right, I'm set up for the shootout, and the first shootout is going to be a three-way shootout between the Soldano SL60, my original PV5150 signature, and this 1995 Mesa Boogie Dual Rectifier. I chose the 5150 because the 5150, or a 5150 of some sort, kind of always is a benchmark for me. It's arguably one of the most popular high-gain amps there is. And I chose the original PV150 instead of the EVH 5150 because I think it's a little closer to the Soldano here. Famously, the original 5150 was somewhat inspired off the Soldano SLO. And the Mesa Boogie because it was also very famously inspired off the SLO 100. And this isn't my amp. This amp belongs to my friend Christoph Grubor, who is an amp tech in the north of Germany. Grubor Musikelektronik. If you need any help with your amps, get in touch with him. He's an awesome guy. And once he saw me posting this amp on social media and I said I'd make a video on it, he offered to lend me his Mesa Boogie. And I had never before played a real Mesa Boogie amplifier. And the reason why I'd never played a Mesa Boogie amplifier was because none of my friends had one and I couldn't afford one for the longest time. Here in Europe, they are quite a bit more expensive than they used to be in the United States, for example. But I believe post-COVID, the prices for rectifiers have gone up in the USA as well. Anyway, when I had the money to buy one, I had already seen said Tone Talk episode where Mike Soldano and Dave Friedman talk about that. He discovered when he had a rectifier on his bench that it was pretty much a one-to-one copy of the Soldano SLO preamp, and he seemed really bummed out about it even later. And I thought, oh, that shower of words that will get me demonetized. They made Mr. Soldano sad. I want no part in that. Of course, we know in the meantime that the power amp is completely different. That plays a big role in shaping the overall tone. I know that in the meantime, when Christoph dropped his head off and showed me the back panel and explained everything, at the latest at that point, I knew there's a lot more to it. Now, I won't be doing much with this head. I just set up the red channel here. I haven't really done anything with the back panel. I don't know this amp super well yet. I'm going to get to know it soon. I'll make a video on that too. It is set to silicone rectifiers and it's in bold mode. I'm going to leave it on the red channel for this shootout. Yeah, also the PV5150, is also very close to the Soldano SLO, but Mike Soldano didn't seem too bummed out about that because it was changed a bit more. So I've talked enough. I'm just going to shoot out some high gain sounds with and without a boost, and then we'll move on.
really interesting because in the room, it's very apparent that they're all closely related. They share an awful lot, but each have their distinct character. The PV5150 has those PV mids going on, and that low mid gonk. Like, it's not gent. 5150s just make that gonk sound. And the Rectifier seems to be the loosest of them all. It's meaning it's least tight. It seems a little scoopier than the others. Of course, it has an EQ. We can bump those mids up a bit, maybe. But it seems, yes, it's the softest. And the SL60, it sounds tidiest to me. It seems to have the least stray frequencies going on. It sounds almost, pre-mixed, as if there's a high and low cut. There's no stray frequencies going on, at least. And it seems to be the tightest. Let's add a boost and see if that changes anything. Adds noise. Again, similar impressions. Even though supposedly the preamp of the Rectifier is closer to that of the Soldano, I think the Soldano and the 5150 sound much closer to each other. The 5150 has more low-end chunk. Of course, it has those the resonance control that the Soldano doesn't have. The depth mod was very popular on Soldanos of the day, and I think the current Soldanos come with depth pods as standard. Where was I? But the Mesa Boogie still seems the softest and least aggressive. But then again, I was recommended to use TC Electronic Pre-style boosts with that and instead of wow, speaking is very hard, tube screamer types. And I think I want to change the boost. Hold on a second. So as you may be able to see, I have a Peepers Pedals Dirty Tree on top of the Rectifier right now, precariously balanced without any tape, so I hope it doesn't fall down. I don't really like it on the TC setting that much, but I don't like TC pedals that much in general, but I really like it on the Dirty Tree setting. So let's just play some chords with that boost between the amps. Alright, so to my ears, the Dirty Tree really kicks the dual rectifier into the sweet spot, but it's a bit too much for the Soldano and the 5150. It starts to feed back, so interesting. Different boosts for different amps.
All right, so personally, I think the Soldano is the tightest amp of the three, at least that's how it sounded in the room, and the tidiest, meaning there's the least bit of noise going on. It just sounds, yeah, kind of pre-mixed almost. The 5150 comes in close second. It has the tightest low end, that's the chunkiest, but the dual rectifier has the biggest low end, and it's kind of the most unique of the, well, that's kind of weird out of three amps, but it is the most different between them. I mean, the Soldano and the 5150 sound pretty close to me in the room, and the rectifier is something different, which is kind of funny given the backstory I just told that, you know, Mike Soldano was upset about the rectifier having a preamp that was almost a one-to-one copy of that, of the Soldano. So really interesting. I have to say though, I don't know this amp particularly well yet. I'm going to get to know it in the next few days and weeks and make a video on that. And now I want to shoot the SL60 out against another amp. And I think I'm going to use the Engl Retro Tube because that was a bit of a favored suggestion on Instagram where I posted this amp. So hold on a sec, I'm going to change the setup and be right back. Right, this is the Engl Retro Tube 50, the 50 watt edition, obviously, of the Engl Retro Tube. And in my opinion, the Engl Retro Tube, how often can I say Engl Retro Tube in this video? The Engl Retro Tube is probably one of the most criminally underrated amps of the last 20 years. And I think it may have had to do with his name, the Retro 50 or Retro 100, kind of in the context of Engl amp names like Savage, Fireball, Powerball, Ironball, Invader, doesn't really sound as assertive maybe, but this thing is a fire breather, and I think it might be my favorite Engl amp, or it might be tied with the Savage for high gain. It does great classic tones and clean tones, but it does a fantastic high gain tone as well. And in the early days of my channel, I made a whole series on this amp, calling it Underrated. It's dusty though, haven't used it in a while. Yeah, that was before I even had the balls to step in front of the camera. But I have this amp has I've got a real soft spot for this amp. And yeah, I'm just going to compare it to the SL60. Okay, immediately the Soldano cuts more. It's much more forward than the Engl. The Engl's almost a little scooped. It has that Engl low end, that bouncy feel to it. I don't know how to describe better. But the Retro Tube, again Retro Tube, it has this tone button here which really shifts the mids. That almost makes the Engl too loud. In fact, it is a bit louder than the Soldano now. Let's try that with the boost.
Still, the Engl compresses more. The Soldano just seems a little less congested and a little more direct. And in this comparison, the Engl has significantly more low end. Obviously, as I said before, the Soldano doesn't have a resonance control, but the Engl Retro Tube doesn't either. It doesn't even have a presence control, but still it packs more low end rumble. But again, the Soldano is tidier. And I think I prefer the Soldano in this direct comparison, even with the tone engaged on the Engl. Before I leave you, let's open the Soldano SL60 up and see how it looks on the inside. Righty, so I got the amp out of the chassis and it's got a few scratches. It's obviously not the first time it's been removed from its chassis. Just 3 preamp tubes as a single channel amp. And I noticed it has, what are they? Tungsol 7581A power tubes. And I've never had those before. And Heavy Metal Gentleman wrote that this amp runs off really high plate voltages. I think in his article, the number he lists might have been 520 volts, which supposedly limits the types of power tubes you can use. So that might be the reason for that. Regardless, the amp sounds great. The next thing I notice is the rather large power transformer. And its legs are slightly bent. Now let me get this camera. You may notice, I don't know if you can see it here, there's kind of, traces of, it looks like something else used to be there, something mounted on a large plate. So I'm assuming this might not be the original power transformer. This might be a retrofit. Anyway, I'm going to tilt it on its side and we'll take a look inside. So this has to be an Amtech's wet dream. Everything is accessible. There's loads of space in here. There's more space in here than in my first apartment. Massive switches, massive potentiometers. All the tube sockets appear to be chassis mounted. Yeah, pretty cool. You can access everything. Let me get the other camera again and give you some shaky close-up footage. Power and standby switch, filter capacitors. That's the preamp. They're the power tubes. Some sockets. Beautiful. Really nice. The more I look at it, the more I'm confident that I'm pretty sure the power transformer has been replaced, because these are the fasteners used for the output transformer. You can see us yellow chrome. There's witness marks on them, and these are the bolts for the power transformer. Very different looking. This amp is not original, it's not stock. I don't really care. I think it sounds awesome. Yeah, maybe I can play with it a bit. Hey, it's editing me. I wanted to pop in here because I've learned some new information on this amp that is important. And sorry for sounding extra nasally right now. Mother Nature is doing her absolute best right now to murder me with hay fever. About the amp, I was so preoccupied with that power transformer that I missed something really obvious. Do you see that yellow brownish circuit board there? That should have been screaming at me. You can see it looks very different to the other two boards. It has a different color. You can't see the traces. The components that populate it are different. And it has schematic symbols on it. And it says TT FX loop on it. That is because that is a retrofit. It's an aftermarket part. This is a series effects loop kit you can buy from German retailer Tubetown. So this amp most likely has a regular effects loop, and that makes me happy that I didn't demo the effects loop on this, because I would have looked even stupider saying, hey, this effects loop is fine. I don't know what everybody's on about. And also I did some digging on the amp. I asked my buddy who I bought the amp from, and it turns out he had bought it from another buddy of mine, who in fact is friends with Robert Leinhus, the man behind Heavy Metal Gentleman and Captain Bob. And I always thought this was the same amp as on his website, but it is the amp on his website. And both those guys did some tweaks to this amp. One was actually changing the power transformer. It is not the original power transformer, as I was, pretty sure it wasn't. My friend still has it probably. Maybe I can get him to send it to me. But I don't feel like changing it because this amp sounds really cool to me. He wasn't quite sure anymore why they changed that, but he assumes it had to do with them fitting the different power tubes. The, oh God, what were they? 7581As? I hope that was right. Anyway, those could dissipate up to 35 watts.
on their plates. So I assume they just draw more current. So I think they wanted to, yeah, make sure that the power transformer could actually supply enough juice for them. So not an original amp, tweaked here and there, but nothing that should fundamentally alter the tone of the amplifier. I just wanted to add that, especially about that effects loop board that somehow I missed, even though it was really jumping at me. Anyway, back to the video. And I think that concludes my little video on the Soldano Super Elite 60 or SL60 Series 2, whatever you want to call it. I think it's a fantastic sounding amp, and I think it's a really cool studio amp, or a really cool live amp if you only need one sound, or maybe two sounds if you use the volume pot on your guitar a bit. So yeah, right now I'm feeling pretty stoked about my financial irresponsibility. What did you think of the Soldano SL60? Tell me down below in the comments. Would you pick one of these up if you found one cheap on the used market, or would you go with the 5150, the Mesa Boogie Dual Rectifier, or perhaps even the Engl? Let's have a chat about it. Thank you so much for watching. If you'd like to support me, you can use my affiliate links down below. Buy used, but if you can't buy used, use one of my affiliate links. Other than that, you can become a patron of mine where I upload IR packs and soon other shit, hopefully. Yeah, thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next video. Bye! That was weird.